Revitalizing old buildings through adaptive reuse projects can be an excellent option for developers and oftentimes has a number of advantages over new construction. Historical and cultural heritage can be preserved, the buildings are often more environmentally friendly due to the reuse, and sometimes they can even save time and money. But to me, the biggest thing is they just make for far cooler projects. This video is going to look at 10 incredible adaptive reuse projects and show the remarkable before and after pictures. So you may recognize some of these projects already as ones that I've done as shorts on this channel, but I was thinking by doing them as a longer form video I could expand a little bit more and give a little bit more details, and also the aspect ratio, the widescreen, is better for scrolling around Google Maps because you get a better idea of what you're looking at. So with no further ado, the first one is the Boathouse in Richmond. As you can see, before it was a pretty rundown old building. It used to be used as part of the city's trolley car system. I think it was like a power station or something along those lines. Anyways, it was renovated in between 2007 and 2011 into this boathouse restaurant. And my favorite part about this is that they were able to turn such a bland, boring building into something so unique after the fact. Now, it may not be everybody's favorite design. Probably some people would not be a fan of it, but I like it, so I think it's a pretty cool project. Anyways, next up we have the Lucas in Boston. This is another one that is potentially a little bit controversial for some people, but it was an old church, and then in 2016 they saved basically just the facade of the building and renovated it into fancy apartments. And this is up in Boston, so plenty of need for fancy apartments. But this is another one. Some people may, have things to say about that design, or have things to say about converting a church into something besides a church. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't going to be used as a church, I think it's better off that it be sort of saved than for it to be just completely torn down. Next up, this one has been the most popular short that I've put out so far, the James Scott Mansion in Detroit. And this one's really remarkable just because of how far gone it was. A lot of these adaptive reuse projects take a building that's already in pretty good shape and turn it into something different. Whereas with this one, as of 2015, it had collapsed, burned down several times, and was completely overgrown. And so the fact that they were able to stabilize it and then rebuild it into something that closely resembled what it looked like when it was originally built is pretty remarkable. And with this one, Detroit has tons of these. This is one of the most spectacular ones, but Detroit, it's got so much cool old architecture, and it's neat to see some of them like these getting saved. Next up, this is headed down to Memphis, Tennessee for the Crosstown Concourse. And the thing with this one is just how big it is. And it was a massive project. I think it was something, maybe 1 million square feet or something. You can really get an idea of the scale when you look down the side of the building, because it is a humongous building. So, and this one, not nearly as bad a shape as that previous one, but it was not in great shape. And then 2015, 2016 rolled around and they got it all in tip-top shape. And unfortunately, they're still in Memphis, so there's some work to be done in the surrounding areas, but for the time being, Crosstown Concourse looks pretty good. Okay, now we're headed up to St. Paul, Minnesota for the Schmidt Artist Lofts. This used to be a brewery, I believe, and then it was converted into a mixed-use, mostly residential complex. And this one, what I like about it is the fact these old industrial buildings a lot of times are pretty hard to salvage and make something useful out of. If it's just a straight up warehouse, it's maybe a little bit easier, but when you have something that was really purpose built for something like a brewery, it can be challenging to save it and to make it into something that's financially viable in the modern day. But with this one, they were able to do that, and they were able to save all that cool architecture and a lot of the old charm of the original facility. So the seventh one that we have on this list is called Congdon Yards in High Point, North Carolina. And basically they took this old warehouse complex and turned it into a mixed-use development with residential, commercial. I think they even have some light industrial in here. But as you can see, a huge improvement over the old, what it used to look like. And this one of my favorite things about this, and I mentioned it in the short that I did about it, but it kind of became a catalyst for the whole area to improve. As you can see before, it was a pretty downtrodden, rough-looking area. There wasn't tons of business. It wasn't super vibrant. But then as the Congdon Yards project took off, then you had these buildings next door. Now all of a sudden they're in use. And then down the street, they built a baseball stadium. So it just, like I said, these projects, these adaptive reuse projects, to me, they're a great way of kickstarting the redevelopment process, but in a way that maintains some of the old charm. I think that's one of the downsides with a lot of these big grand development plans that a lot of cities have. They see a neighborhood that's struggling and they decide, oh, well, the easiest, most cost-effective way to deal with it would be to tear it all down, rebuild something new. But when you do these projects like this one, you can keep a lot of that old charm, and you can keep a lot of the old buildings, and you can keep even a lot of the old residents and things like that without necessarily kicking everybody to the curb all at once. And then the end result is better, in my opinion, anyways, because it's a more cohesive plan. It's not a random suburban-looking office building in one place and a different-looking, it all kind of fits together. So next up, this one is in Nashville, Tennessee. This one is crazy to me. This one, just because it shows how much Nashville has grown in the last 10 to 15 years. As you can see right here, this little block is kind of overgrown. There's not really much going on. It stays that way for a few years. This is up to 2015 now. 2016 is when things start to change. And as you can see, they've already built this whole new apartment building down there. New apartments down there. But the adaptive reuse project is this building right here, and it used to be a blacksmith shop, and they were able to keep some of that building and the old lettering and stuff. This one definitely was, they had less to work with, but I think what they came up with was pretty cool. And here is modern day. I think someone said this might have gotten hit by a tornado at some point. I could be wrong. But, so I don't know if it's even exactly the same as the original building, but it's at least close. So maybe a little asterisk next to that one. Next up, back to Baltimore, we have the Hebrew Orphan Asylum. This one's cool to me just because of what it looked like. I mean, it's such a eerie building. I feel like it's exactly what you would expect from a creepy old abandoned orphanage. But the fact that they were able to salvage it, save the building, and turn it into something useful, like with all these, is pretty cool. This one ended up being turned into like a community health clinic, focusing on drug rehabilitation and things of that nature, which for this area is very, very much needed. So killed two birds with one stone. You save a cool building and you add some much needed services to a community. So that's pretty cool. And last but not least, we have, this one's also in Baltimore, the Thames Street Wharf. This building, it's let me see if you can see it from a better angle. It's a pier, and as you can see, it was in fairly rough shape, not being used for tons as of about 15 years ago. But then some of the team behind the Under Armour products decided that they wanted to make it into a fancy hotel. So They started 2015 timeframe, started working on it, completely redid the whole thing, and came up with a pretty neat end result. So that's that.